It's my habit, my custom, when I am a guest preacher, not only to preach to the adults, but also to the kids. So if it's okay, I'd like everybody under, say, 20 to come up front with me. Would that work? And okay, if you can have a seat in this pew here, that'd be great. So, my name is Pastor Mark. My name's Mark, and people call me Pastor Mark because I've been a pastor for quite a while. And actually, I had one young boy in our congregation, and he didn't know what a pastor, you know what a pastor is, right? Yeah, but he hadn't been to church much. And his grandmother brought him to church. And when he heard pastor, you know what he heard? He called me Passenger Mark. But I'm not a passenger, I'm a pastor. So I want to tell you a little story. And what's your name? Jason? Jason, can you help me? Yeah, all right, good. Come on up, and I want you to stand there, and I'm going to stand here, okay? Look at me, okay? Now, it's very important when you're talking to somebody to get down onto their level. So if I was talking to Jason, I'd get down on my knees, right? Right? Another thing that people do is they imitate the person who's talking to them. Okay? So what I want you to do, I can see you eye to eye, right? Right? Okay. But what I want you to do is I want you to imitate me. Okay? So what would you do? What would he do? Look at the person, right? But I want him to imitate me. So look at the way I am. So I want you to follow me and get down like this. Understand? Aha, good. But now I have to get on your level. So I have to get down like this. So what do you do? It's good to meet you, Jason. All right, thank you. I did this. I had a girl who was about 5. How old are you? 6? I had a girl. She was about in our congregation, and she was about 5. And I was talking to her in the social hall. And so I got down under her level, but she decided she was going to imitate everything I did. And so we ended up lying down on the cold tile floor and having a little chat. Pay attention to the ways people talk and where they are, because that's important. That says something to you. Okay? And maybe you can help out later on with the rest of the sermon. All right. Thanks for coming up, guys. You can go back to your parents. So Richard led you in reading the first part of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, which is often called the Beatitudes. And the Beatitudes and the rest of the Sermon on the Mount have been very important for me in my in my Christian life. I have studied it carefully. I have translated it all from the Greek. I have memorized it. And I have preached it from memory by heart in a variety of congregations and elsewhere. And if my memory serves, I have preached the Sermon on the Mount by heart here. And few people remember. Okay? And so it is very familiar to me. And one of the problems when something is so familiar is that sometimes it becomes harder for God to speak to you through it. Because I know everything Jesus is going to say next. And so I was really happy this past month, a little more than a month ago. I got a new book of poems from one of my favorite authors. And in it, he talks about the Sermon on the Mount and the Beatitudes. And he talks about it in a way I hadn't quite ever considered before. And so that opened up for me, it opened up for God, a new way of talking to me. And so when I was asked to preach here, I thought this was a wonderful example to re-examine this part of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount and see what it might say. So I want you to, I hope it will open up for you a new way for God to talk to you. But before I talk about Jesus' sermon back then, 2,000 years ago in Galilee, I'd like to ask you a question or some questions about here and now. It is my habit. It is my choice, my desire to preach where I am right now, on the floor, on the level of the people, not up on a stage. I prefer not to. In the open, and not, if you will, behind a pulpit. And what I'd like to ask you is how that feels different. To have somebody preaching from here as compared to somebody preaching from behind a pulpit. What feels different about that? What might that say to you to have the preacher down here as opposed to up there?
More personal.
Personal?
Yeah.
Okay. What? Approachable. Let me put that approachable from my side. It feels, oh gosh. You see, I'm getting older and I'm losing some of the words I have. It feels vulnerable, okay? Yes, you get to see my shoes if I want to kick.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's vulnerable for you then?
Yes, it's vulnerable for me, but it might also carry on to be a little more vulnerable for people in the congregation, especially if I come up close to you, right, my friend? Okay. And this congregation, as I've known having preached here before, this congregation is a little hesitant to speak up. Thank you so much for starting us out. Okay? So the question I asked, the first question I asked when I looked at this Sermon on the Mount again was, why is it that Jesus sat down to preach it? Okay. What? He had a lot to say. I'm sorry, Nancy, that doesn't make it, because I have preached the whole thing, and I have never had to sit down to preach the whole thing. It is not a long sermon. It lasts shorter than this sermon I'm giving today will. That's the question I asked, okay? And I want you to think about, and if you have thoughts on it, I'm open for those. But the reason I ask you to think about my preaching from here is so that you would think about this. Now let me read you about Jesus' audience, okay? From the few verses before the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew tells us this, chapter 4, verses 23. Jesus went through Galilee, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and curing every disease and every sickness among the people. So his fame spread through all of Syria, and they brought to him all the sick and those who were afflicted with various diseases and pains, demoniacs, epileptics, and paralytics, and he cured them. And great crowds followed him from Galilee, the Decapolis, Jerusalem, Judea, and from beyond the Jordan. And when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain. And after he sat down, his disciples came to him, and he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, this is the crowd that Jesus wants to talk to. Okay? He goes up and he sits down in order to talk to these folks. People who have been suffering with chronic illnesses. Their caregivers. People who have come for miles up from what is now Syria and Lebanon and Jordan, and from the south of Galilee, from Jerusalem and Judea. Some of these people have come for 50 miles, walked for 50 miles, walked as people who are sick to start out with. Some of them have come. We have this wonderful story elsewhere in Mark about these 4 friends who carried their friend on a stretcher all the way to Jesus in order to be healed. We have these folks, this crowd of people who have come, many of them, a long way. And I think that one of the reasons Jesus sat down is because the people he was talking to are tired. Okay? So that's a little different than what it said in that poem I read, but I want you to look at what Jesus says to them. The first words out of his mouth. Blessed are those who are poor in spirit. What? Yes, great. We're going to get a slide up here. Okay? We're going to get a new slide. Okay. Blessed are those who are poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. He is looking out at a bunch of folks who are sick or who are caregivers, who have been caregivers for a long time. And they may be close to the end of their rope. They may have spent all of the energy they have just to get there to see him. They are out of breath, if you will. And I want you to look also at the last of the Beatitudes. Okay, next slide. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. These are people who, for maybe all of their lives, have tried to do what is right and good, who have tried to do the best they could for other people, who have sacrificed maybe. But in the end, they didn't receive the thanks they deserved. They are persecuted, insulted, whatever. And they too may be near the end of their rope. It can be very, very discouraging to do good things for other people and then end up with nothing more than an insult. Back to the slides. How is this first beatitude and the last beatitude, what is similar with those? Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Okay? Now I want you to look at the next few. What is similar about the next few? Let's say 4, 5, what have we got? 4, 5, and 6. What is similar between those that is different than the first and the last? Grammatically, what's different between what is the same with 4, 5, and 6 that is different from 3? Huh? Yeah. Number one, the first one and the last one are both in the present. All the rest of them, the middle 6, they are all in the future. The first one and the last one, they are holding the whole thing together. This is where Jesus is now, and this is where the people are now. He looks out at these people, and they are poor in spirit. And they have been persecuted for doing what is right. They have come to see Jesus on the mountain in order to be healed, or to have their loved ones healed, or to hear some good news, some good news about the kingdom, to keep them going. Jesus looks out at these people. And they are people who need healing and people who need to be encouraged to keep on doing what's right and good. Okay? I'd like to read you an excerpt from the same author that wrote that poem that got me going. His name is Wendell Berry, and he's a writer. But after he graduated from Stanford, and after he first took a little professorship in New York, he went back to his home in Kentucky and bought a farm and farmed for the next, now it is 60 plus years. He's in his 90s, he's still writing, he's still farming. And over that time, most of what he has written about has been about the health of the land and of the local ecosystems and of local human cultures and economy. Let me read what he says. It's fairly long. I will not be altogether surprised to be told that I have set forth here a line of thought that is attractive but hopeless. A number of critics have advised me of this out of their charity, as if I might have written of my hopes for 40 years without giving a thought to hopelessness. Hope, of course, is always accompanied by the fear of hopelessness, which is a legitimate fear. And so I would like to conclude by confronting directly the issue of hope. The things that I have tried to defend are less numerous and worse off now than when I started. But in this, I am only like all other conservationists. All of us have been fighting a battle that on average we are losing. And I doubt there is any use in reviewing the statistical proofs. The point, the only interesting point, is that we have not quit. Ours is not a fight that you can stay in very long if you look on victory as a sign of triumph or on loss as a sign of defeat. We have not quit because we are not hopeless. I relate to that because I, as well, consider myself a conservationist. And and I know that the battle to save ecosystems and healthy land and small communities with healthy economies and healthy cultures, that on average, that's a battle we're losing. But I can relate to this as a pastor as well. Because on average, the battle for the church, the battle for, if you will, for congregations is a battle which on the average we are losing. As I know very well, because our congregation that I last served had to close our doors. The last time I spoke with you, there were more people here than there are here today, even though I am so happy to see new faces. It's on average. Point. The only interesting point is that we have not quit. Is that you are all here. You have all come today. You give of your tithes and your offerings. You give of your work and your hours and you give your heart. And what Jesus says to us who may be discouraged or tired or on the verge of hopelessness, to those of us who are poor in spirit, to those of us who have not received the thanks we deserve for the work we have done, who see good work often ending up in loss and not triumph. What Jesus says is, yours is the kingdom of heaven. And it is. It not will be, it is. Jesus looks out and he sees people who are living at that time in the kingdom of heaven. And Jesus can look out and say the same thing to each of you. Yours is the kingdom of heaven. You are citizens together with the saints, to use Paul's words. And Jesus offers these promises. It's not just the present and your presence, it is these future promises. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. They will receive somebody to come alongside them to get them through that last bit. I can't think of that verse without remembering an example that Pastor Ted gave once in a sermon. He talked about running the Big Sur Marathon. And after 25 miles of running, he was about done in. Any of you remember the example? His brother, Ken, came out on mile 25 and ran with him the last mile. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will find somebody to walk with them through that last bit. Blessed are the meek, the humble, the workers, not the talkers. For they will receive the land, for they will inherit the land. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, to do what is good, to do what is just, for they will always find good work to do. Blessed are the merciful and the generous, for their mercy and their generosity will return to them. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are those who make peace, for they will be called sons and daughters of God. 6 promises. 6 beautiful promises, but all you need to do is to hold on to one of those to get you through. This congregation is in a difficult time. I didn't set out to preach this sermon because in order to address that, but it ended up that way. But what I would like you to hear this morning from me, and if you can, from Jesus himself, yours is the kingdom of God. Yours is the kingdom of heaven. By your very presence, you are in the kingdom of God. Your work is good work, whether it yields anything or not. And I want you to hear these promises. Amen.